Jordan Peterson is a brilliant man. So Jordan Peterson is a professor at the University of Toronto, and he's just so much smarter than me. I mean, okay, I know I'm no slouch, I have some indications that I'm fairly sharp, but he's just in another universe as far as I'm concerned. He's really bright.
Very clear.
Very clear. He knows exactly what he is saying every time.
About what?
About everything.
Anything.
I
watched multiple videos of him.
Yeah.
He's very...
About authoritarian governments and the formation of authoritarian
So is he a
governments.
political science guy? Or?
No, he's a psychology professor. I thought it was pretty important to read a transcript. I started to do a transcript of that video because I wanted to understand and really grok what he said. And the significance of what he said relates back to paragraph 752 of Answer to Job, and relates to a specific sentence in that paragraph, which is 2 pages long as usual, where he says, "But religious statements, without exception, have to do with the reality of the psyche and not with the reality of the physis." Okay.
The what?
Physis, the physical. Physis is the physical world. He's speaking Latin here. Okay, so the point is but religious statements without exception. Okay, so every religion in the world, religious statements without exception have to do with the reality of the psyche and not with the reality of the physis. Okay. When I read that sentence, I had epiphany. Okay. I said, aha, I finally got it. What religion is all about. I've been struggling with it my whole life, trying to understand, what are the fundamentalists all about? How can they be saying these things, and so on. And when I read that, I got it. Okay, that it's a psychic fact. It's not. And in the previous paragraph, he says, what people don't seem to understand is that I believe in the psyche. I believe the psyche is real. Okay, that's what he says in paragraph 751 of our Answer to Job. So Jung says, I believe the psyche is real, and then he makes this statement. And so now Jordan Peterson, who's like 3 generations after Jung, but he's extremely bright. Okay, I mean he's just in another universe. Okay, and so I didn't get everything he said on this video, and it's a video with Jordan Peterson where he's reconciling science and religion. Okay, and this is what he says, quoting Jordan Peterson now. Even the fundamentalists have the wrong idea about religious truth. Religious truth is not scientific truths, like the stories of Genesis, which are very old stories, maybe tens of thousands of years old. They obviously are not scientific theories because the people who wrote them were not scientists. We didn't have science until about 500 years ago. So the idea that the stories in Genesis are scientific theories is just false on every possible front. So then you might say, well, there's no other truth except scientific truth. Well, wait a minute. That's not true, because what scientific truth tells you is what things are. But a genuine religious truth tells you how you should act. And those two things are not the same. And so a great story, like a great novel, is a quasi-religious construction, because it's like a distillation of ordinary life into its most important elements. That's a map about how you should comport yourself in the world. You might say, well, what do you mean by should? Because that's the question that moral relativists have. There's an answer to that too. And I got this answer from Jean-Pierre Piaget. Here's how you should act. You should act so that things are good for you like they would be for someone you're taking care of. But they have to be good for you in a way that is also good for your family. And to be good for you in a way that is also good for society. And even also be good for the broader environment, if you can manage that. So it's balanced at all those levels. And so that has to be good for you, your family, and society and the world right now, next week, next month, and a year from now, and 10 years from now. And so it's this harmonious balancing of multiple layers of being simultaneously. That's a Darwinian reality, I would say. Your brain is actually attuned to tell you when you're doing that. And the way it tells you is that it reveals that what you are doing is meaningful. That's the sign. And your nervous system is adapted to do this. It's adapted to exist on the edge between order and chaos. Chaos is where things are so complex you can't handle it, and order is where things are so rigid that it's too restrictive. In between that, there's a place that's meaningful. You're partly stabilized and partly curious. You're operating in a manner that increases your scope of knowledge. You're operating in a manner that increases your scope of knowledge. You're inquiring and growing. At the same time, you're stabilizing and renewing you, your family, society, and the world. Now, next month, and next year. When you have an intimation of meaning, you know you're there. Okay, so that's the first part of a 40-minute video, and the video is on YouTube, P5_PFQ, capital F, capital G, capital J, capital I.
Now I've forgotten what the guy's name was.
And the guy's name was Jordan Peterson. I'm curious about your
I
reaction.
want to be a party pooper. So.
Okay, be a party pooper.
Well, it seems idealistic and simplistic to me.
Well, it is idealistic and simplistic as all.
A radio DJ.
Oh.
Yeah, he's being interviewed by a radio DJ, so you have to understand his context. But the reality is, that puts together a lot of things that I've been thinking about, and it supports what Jung said in answer to Job. Okay.
Well, just the part about pointing out, they didn't write it at a time when science was prevalent, so it reminded me of how this in history. You can't use today's lens to judge historical things that occurred in the past because it's a different lens. So
yeah, we can't talk about Moses and the Exodus in terms of scientific fact, right? Because there was no science back then. Nobody understood science. And
I know you got that needle out there, it's a balloon.
I don't know. There's a lot of semantics going on.
Well, there is semantics going on, but we need semantics, don't we?
Well, I'm just saying. I think there's a lot of to declare that science didn't exist until 500 years ago. Okay. Well. What exactly is science? And then if you want to define it so that only started 500 years ago, then you're right.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. You can say that the building of the building of the pyramid 7,000 years before Christ did involve science. It involved mathematics and certainly a lot of, pardon?
Even astronomy.
Yeah, it involved astronomy and astrology and,
Based, it was science.
right, and it involved certainly a lot of engineering, right? But what he's referring to is the Enlightenment type of science. Okay, the type.
Talked about atoms in 500 BC.
So he's talking about scientific method.
Right. Okay. The Hindus were talking about the what it was, the net of jewels or something like that. Probably.
Darwinian idea.
I mean, obviously, I mean, he's talking about the Enlightenment, and he's talking about the break away from the Christian church's mythology, okay, which
They're going to probably call that a dark ages 1,000 years from now, 500 years from now.
Which part?
The Enlightenment.
yeah, I mean that's what he and Edinger and Jung are saying.
Yeah.
I mean, all those people thought they were enlightened and they thought they were good Christians, but what they were doing was undermining the psychic structure, the mythical structure of the society.